Yeah, good morning, students. How are you this morning? Trust you have a splendid night's rest. Okay, this morning we'll continue from where we stopped last week, probably this week thereabouts. Of course, this morning we'll be looking at sentences. We'll be looking at phrase. We'll be looking at clause, clauses. So all these three aspects are very, very important that will lead you to knowing the grammatical name as well as what grammatical words, as well as grammatical function. You get it now. So you need to understand what a sentence is, right? You need to understand what a phrase is. You need to understand what a clause word is. Then now, but having gotten this understanding, it will now move you down to know your grammatical name, grammatical functions. Of course, you might not necessarily be dealing with this grammatical function very, very well because this grammatical function is basically for your work for your SSC English language. Or why we just added this in order for you to have a ground knowledge of what we are going to talk about? Because in your question, you'll be looking at word classification, where you determine what the grammatical function of a particular word. And that is why it will be very necessary for you to also know your grammar from your noun down to interjection respectively, because you definitely would come across questions that will say you should determine the grammatical name, right? Of course, the function might not necessarily be asked, but you'll be asked of what? Of grammatical name. And there is no how you're able to do justice to this kind of question without you knowing your sentences, without you know your phrases, as well as clause. That is number one. Then number two, under that, after this, we now look at now phrase, now clause, adjectival phrase, adjectival clause, adverbial phrase, adverbial clause. So all these things are very, very, very important. So that is why we start from sentence what this morning. Then after sentences, then we'll definitely look at what phrases. After phrases, you look at what your clause is. And you now tend to know you tend to know the types of clause we have. We have independent rights or may clause. Then we have what dependent or subordinate, dependent or subordinate what clauses. So out of these clauses, at the end of the day, you can actually relate to the one that can link up what to also make your sentence, which is what your may clause. The definition that you can give your words, your may clause or independent clause will also be the definition for your sentences. So let's start with what is a sentence? In a Sanskrit, a sentence are a group of words that make what? A complete sense or a complete thought. It expresses an idea completely. And in your sentence, elements of your sentence, you have your what? You have your subject, right? You have your what? You have your object, you have your verb, you have your complement, and what? Your adjective. But of course, it's not necessary for you to have all this one. Sorry, it's not necessary for you to have all these other elements before you can have your what? Can have your sentence or sentences. Now, in your sentence, another thing that you also need to know in your sentence must start with a capital letter. Your sentence must start with what? With a capital letter. Your sentence must contain what? Subjects. Your sentence must also contain predicates. Predicates, this predicate will also mean your what? Your verb, which is action word. Predicate means your action word, which also means your what? Your verb. So basically, then it must end with either the three head marks, who could be your what? Your full stop, right? Or your what? Your exclamation mark, or your question mark. Yes. Your sentences must start with a capital letter, must have a subject, or has what predicate or what or if predicate or your verb. Then your sentence must end with either of the three end marks, depending on how you are positioning what the sentence is. Now, if the sentence is not asking question, then you apply your full stop. If the sentence is not showing feelings or awareness, right? Sorry, if the sentence is showing feelings or awareness, you add your exclamation mark. And if the sentence is asking question, what, who, how, when, then it ends with your question mark. And note, whenever any of these marks, right, is used in your sentences, now the next letter that will follow must start with what? With a capital letter. Is that okay? It must start with a capital letter. Now, example of this, we have what? Now you have what the man is teaching. This is a complete sentence, right? It expresses complete idea of what the man is doing. Now, let's break it down. You have your man here who formed the subject. You have your verb here. Then what the man is doing. You have it here. Now it starts with a capital letter. Look at the capital letter here, the T. The capital letter T. It starts with a capital letter T, right? It starts with a capital letter T. Then ending with your full stop. Okay, let me be marking one after. It starts with capital letter. Bam, right? Now the subject of this sentence is this man, right? Even D also which is your article. You know, your D is other your article, showing the words. Your D is your is your article. Then which was the man? They're either predicate or verb. You have it here, which is. So this makes a complete sentence, and it is ending with by full stop. Here's my full stop. I just quote it here so that you understand. Here is my full stop, so that I'm using the first part of the word. I'm using the first part of the head mark here. So that is your sentence. It must express a complete thought. Now, another one you also know about sentence is that you say a sentence contains a finite verb. Let me explain that. In some textbooks, you definitely see that a sentence contains a finite verb. Now, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by by finite verb and not finite verb? Right? In a simple form, a finite verb are verb that is subject to change. That is, their present past participle. Their present can change to past, and their past can change to past participle. And when you get to past participle, it cannot further subject to any change again. That is why it is called finite verb. Then non-finite verb are verb that cannot change, that cannot subject to change. The difference is just one can change, the second one, which is the other one cannot change. That means that your finite verb can change and your non-finite verb cannot change. Example. Let's take this example so that you understand it very well. Now, under finite verb, right? Under finite verb, I'll use the simple form of it so that you know. Under finite verb, you have you have your come, right? Now you have your this come can further change to to K. And this come also can further change to come. Now some of you might be confused with it. There are some verbs that their present maintain their past participle. We have run, ran, run. Another example is run, ran, run. Run, ran, run. Right? But we are not looking at it in the form of present, past, or past participle. What we are looking at, we are looking at the changing form of what of the verb. So any verb that is subject to what to change, it is called what a finite verb. A good example, have your word come, came, come. Right? You have your word run, ran, what run. Okay. Now, when we now talked about what non-finite verb, right? They are verb that cannot was subject to change. A good example, we have under your what your non-finite verb. Your non-finite verb, you have your non-finite verbs. We have your non-finite verb, you have your coming, you have your going, excuse me, you have your going, then you can have your walked. ATC. You have your coming, you have your going, you have your walked. So you can't further change this verb to any other form again because is in its what final state. Are you getting it now? So when you come across this kind of verb, right, it is seen as what? As non-finite verb. Please get it. It is seen as not finite verb. So that is why you will say that what? That your sentence must contain a what? A finite what? Verb. Then here you see that what? Your phrases contains what? Non-finite verb. Your phrases contain non-finite verb. That is why I say that it will not make a what? A complete sentence or a complete thought, right? Okay. Now, after getting the understanding of a sentence, let's move down. Let's move down. Okay, let me explain here. I do not just the clause, right? A clause are group of words that can either make a complete sense or not what a complete sense. If they are group of words that can either make what a complete sense or not complete sense. So that is why you need to distinguish. You need to know the difference between a sentence and what and a clause. A clause can make what a complete sense, and also it may make what a complete sense, right? Now, example of a clause, you can say the man is here, right? This is an example of what? This is an example of what of a clause, right? And this make what a complete sense. Now, example of what of a clause that will not make a complete sense what? Because he was tired. You can see it now. Now, number one is a good example of what? Of a clause. While number two is a good example of a clause that does not make what a complete sense. Why is it a clause? You have your what? You have your verb or your predicate what in it. Now, because he was tired, then you now that just because he was tired. Then there are more information to because he was tired. Do you get it now? But here, the man is here. So either one or two, they are basically what? A clause, right? That's why you define a clause that what? A clause can either make a complete sense or not what? A complete sense. So on the basis of this, that is where you now have two types of clauses. Two types of what? Of clause. Now, here we have what? One, we have independent what clause, and two, we have dependent clause. Now, another name for this independent clause is also means out as main clause. It means main clause. And another name for this independent clause, another name for this dependent clause, it also means what? Subordinate. Subordinate clause. Please know it. I'll also fall back to this example, and I'll make a comparison now. Under independent clause are make clause that there are type of clauses that express what? A complete what? Thought. A complete what? Expression. And that is close to your sentence, right? But it's also what? A clause. Now, under dependence or dependent clause, as the name implies, dependent, it will rely on some other group of words before it can make it complete meaning. Now, under a dependent clause, if you have it to be attached to example 2. Why dependent clause is attached to example 1? Now, why independent clause is attached to example 1, then dependent clause is attached to example 2. Please get that. I get it now. So if you now want to look at it critically, that which of it that will make sense with sentence, the one that will make sense with sentence is your number 1, which is main clause or independent clause, because you can use the same definition to define a sentence. Please get that. You can use what to define what a sentence, because this clause it has what two type, which is dependent and what an independent clause. And that is what I've given to these two examples. If you have questions to this end, you can ask before I move further to the last one, which is phrase. And this background is very, very important before we now move down to a noun. This time we're not talking about noun as a part of speech. Of course, we other part of speech, but we'll be looking at it as what? Noun phrase and noun clause. Under noun phrase, how many types of noun phrase do we have? We have subject of a verb, object of a verb, object complement, apposition to a noun, then apposition to a noun, then preposition to a noun. Basically, these are types of noun phrase that we have. So also the same thing as you also have them as well as noun clause. So why is it called a phrase? It is called a phrase because it will not make what a complete sense, and there will be absence of verb, which finite verb what in any expression that will be underlined. On the basis of that, you determine whether it is subject of a verb or object or what of a verb. Then you will not determine again if there is clause in it. They will not determine, and you have the presence of noun in the expression that you underline. Then you now see it as a noun clause. But we are not going to noun clause this time around. We just focus on noun phrase. Thereafter, subsequently, we talked about noun clause at the same time. But basically, this is the foundation. You need to understand the foundation before we move further. So if you have any question to this particular one, ask before we move further to a phrase. A phrase is very, very simple. It's just opposite of your clause. So is there any question? Sorry, is there any question? Okay, fine. In the absence of no question, let's just look at a phrase. Now, a phrase is a group of words that does not contain what? A finite verb. It's presence of what? Of non-finite verb, or a phrase a group of words that does not make what? A complete what sense, or a complete what thoughts. Now, examples under this, let me just the man. The man at the gates. The man at the gates. I just come to the man at the gates. So you'll be expecting more expression what to this. The man at the gates. What happens to the man at the gates? Why are you talking about what? About the man at the gates. So these are example of what? Of phrase. Or you can have this coming home. Right? Coming home. These are examples of what? Of phrase. Coming home. Then you are expecting more to what? To this expression. Coming home for what? Right? Or boiled yam. Boiled yam. What happened to what? To boiled what? Boiled yam. So all these expressions, you need more other group of words what to it for it to maintain it complete what sense. Are you getting it now? So basically, this is just what a phrase what and comprise. But in your question, nobody will ask you what is a phrase, nobody will ask you what is a clause, nobody asks what is a sentence. It is expected that you need to know all these things, but majorly the application will now be very, very key, that the examiner is expecting that, okay, fine, you must have gone through all this so that when you come across the question, you can pick the right answers therein. Okay, basically, we start with a noun phrase. Now you know what a phrase is. Now we start what a noun. A noun phrase. A noun phrase has to do with an head word in a sentence. A noun phrase has to do with an head word, like your title, right? Your title, your subtitle, which is the word of what? Of a clause. A noun phrase has to do with an head word in a sentence, right? A good example, you can have what? The village head, the village headmaster, right? You can have what? The village headmaster. So this is an head word now, right? So this is a typical example of a noun phrase. So it has to do with an head word in what? In a sentence. So if I want to put this properly, then I will underline what the head word. Let me do it. Let's just take this as example one. Example one. The village headmaster is here, right? When you see especially the village headmaster is here, and I underline from here, I underline the expression from here down to this place. So, and I ask you to determine the, and ask you to determine the head word. So the head word of this sentence now, looking at what the underlined group of words, it is can be classified under what? Under noun phrase, please. It can be classified under noun phrase because if you look at from the village headmaster, there's nothing like a verb here. And if you look at what the village headmaster formed the head word of this sentence, right? The village headmaster formed the head word of this sentence. So as such, it could be seen as what? As a noun phrase. Okay. Now, given this understanding, we'll now definitely look at different type of noun phrase. Sorry, functions of noun phrase, not types of functions of noun phrase. Okay. Let's look at functions of noun phrase. Number one. A noun phrase can function as subject of a verb. Please know it. We'll take this one after the other. It can function as subject of the verb. Two, it can function as object. It can function as object of a verb, right? It can function as subject complement. Please, you should know the difference between this complement and this complement. Right? The difference between I and E. This is when you are adding up, like you are adding up to something. A good example when you say maybe complementary angle in mathematics, you have a complementary angle. Do you get it now? So in addition to another one, right? Why this has to do with greeting? Maybe season greeting. This one has to do with greeting. Basically, maybe season greeting, right? The second one has to do with greeting. So the difference between it is your letter E and your letter I. Okay. So moving away from that, we have 4. We have subject of a verb, object of a verb, subject complement. We have object complement, right? Then 5, we have we have what? Okay, 5, we have apposition. It can function as apposition to a noun. All the functions can function as apposition to a noun. Then 6 is what? Complement of a preposition. We have complement of a preposition. Just end that way. Complement of a preposition. So basically, these are what functions of a noun phrase. These are 6 functions of a noun phrase. Subject of a verb, then object of a verb. We have subject complement, we have object complement, we have apposition to a noun, then complement of a preposition. You should know what a preposition is by now, but when we get there, we'll definitely explain it. So let's take this one after the other with examples. Let's start from subject of a verb, right? Subject of a verb. Subject of a verb, when a noun phrase occupies the first position in a sentence. I come again. When a noun phrase occupies the first position in a sentence, it functions as the subject of a verb that follows it immediately. Let me take it gently. When a noun phrase, right? When a noun phrase functions as the subject of a verb, right? Now, it occupies the first position. When a noun phrase occupies the first position in a sentence, right? Now, it functions as the subject of a verb that follows it immediately. All right? Okay. Subject of a verb. When a noun phrase occupies the first, please, okay, let me write this in capital letter. The first position in a sentence. This functions as these functions are the subjects of a verb that follows the noun phrase immediately. Please know that. Please know this, because it is very, very important. Please know this. Now, let's take example of this, and I will also give you a classwork to do. With this example, you will definitely what? So I will definitely confirm that you are following. All right. Now, example. Let me see you was the village what headmaster. The village. The village headmaster is here. Now I'm underlining this to this place. This is a full stop. Now, if I'm to determine what the grammatical name and grammatical function of this expression now, right? Now, I've also determined the underlying word. The underlying word, looking at it critically, there is no verb there, right? Automatically, I will name it to what? To be a noun, what? A noun phrase, right? Now, from the expression that when a noun phrase, I've named it as what? As a noun phrase now here. I've named it as, because it's the head word, I've named it as what? As a noun phrase now. Now, when we're talking about subject of a verb, he said, when the noun phrase occupy the first position. Now, in this sentence now, the noun phrase actually what? Occupies what? The first word position, right? Now, immediately after this first position, where do you see the verb that follow this first position is here? Is this is that is here, that appears immediately after what? The noun phrase. Now, since the verb that appears here is what it is that appears immediately after the noun phrase, then you now have to what? The grammatical function will not be, right? Will not be is. That the subject or what of the verb is what? Is. Okay, let me write. Subject of a verb is. You put it in inverted comma, but in the course of your question, there's no point of you putting in inverted comma, but I'm putting inverted comma here to show emphasis. You get it now? So now that is what that defines. That defines what we mean by subject of a verb. When a noun phrase occupies the first position. So in this sentence now, my noun phrase, which is the village headmaster, occupies what? The first position. So the verb that follows what? The first position immediately is what it is. So it now functions as our subject of what? Of a verb. So basically, okay, let me just give you quick this to do. Let me give you quick this. The man at the beautiful gate is my father. Please unmute yourself to answer this question. The underlying word is here. Can you determine the grammatical name from here? Can you determine the grammatical name as well as what? The grammatical function. Anybody? Before I call it a day.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, what is the grammatical name here?
Okay, the grammatical name is noun phrase.
Okay, any other person to determine the grammatical function? You are correct. Absolutely. It's a noun phrase because the underlining word, the man at the beautiful gate.
Yes,
the beautiful here is an adjective. It's not what? Not a verb.
Yes,
right? It's an adjective. It's not what? It's not a verb. Now, telling us this, how beauty the man is, describing what? The state that what? The beauty that the man what is inclined with, right? So it's an adjective. Please don't get it what instead. So another person to determine what? The grammatical function.
The
Sir,
grammatical
subject of the verb is.
Correct. Since here is what the first person, I think the first lady answered the question to what that the grammatical name is what it's a noun phrase. Yes, beautiful, brilliantly. Is what is a noun phrase. Please get that. Let me just shorten it there. And the grammatical function, which is the person, I think the second person now, is what is the subject of what of the verb. Subject of the verb is. Please get it. Because the noun phrase occupies first position in this sentence. And immediately after the noun phrase, you are having your verb. Do you get it now? I don't know. Some of you might be looking at it when you get to your question after summary in your secondary school. You look at this is difficult. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. Just what pay attention and understand the principle and the rules that governs it. So take this, do more of it. I think you have many of it in your past questions. Study it, study ahead. But of course, next week we'll take it from object or what of a verb. How do you determine the object of a verb in what as a noun phrase? So next week we'll definitely discuss about that. Do enjoy your weekend. Thank you very much. God bless.